Jennifer, listen, welcome to Super A Television. It's great to have you on board. This is Jennifer Harper-Deacon, and who's a naturopath, and I've known her for years. But you take it away now, Jennifer. How would you describe yourself? How would you describe your profession?
Well, my profession, I've been training now for way over 30 years, actually. In my first degree, I was lucky enough to get a sabbatical to America. And the course I was doing was just awful in America. So I contacted the UK university and I said, look, could I switch courses and I will make up the UK course when I come back? And so that was when I was lucky enough to get into psychology, sports medicine. I worked with a nutritionist in medical wards in hospital. And that was sort of like, wow, this world exists. And so as soon as I finished my first degree, I just knew that I wasn't going to go into that profession, but actually I wanted to go into healthcare. And so I basically started that journey then, and I trained as a nutritionist, as a naturopath, as a herbalist. I've trained in Chinese medicine, iridology. In the 80s, I was spotted by a healer who, very well-known healer, who also said I had the gift of healing. And several more healers said the same thing. So eventually I explored that. And I don't stop studying to this day. To me, it's not one size fits all, and it's fantastic to see our sort of systems coming into play now are more personalized medicine and not one size fits all. And so even as a nutritionist with that hat on, I studied functional medicine since the 90s. And again, you just look at all the different subsets of people, what's working, what's not working, and always evolving, always evolving. And so now I'm in quite a new area for the last 2 years, dovetailing on what I learnt, golly, back and what I practiced back in the 90s. And
well, so if I can stop you there, Jennifer.
Yeah.
If you trace the history of how I knew you, because I remember meeting you through a friend's girlfriend, actually, a lady called Ruth. And John Simpson was the gentleman, and he was one of my first clients at Wentworth, and I met you through Wentworth. And I know over the years, you know, we've been on the same panel at Wentworth when they used to try to educate the membership on nutrition and exercise. And I always remember you being very into alternative medicine. You wrote for the Sunday Times Style magazine the same time I did. And you had a column called "What's the Alternative?" Correct?
That's right.
And you got a lot of awards for all your articles and your points of view. And you were very much into Chinese medicine then. So going back to say the 90s and coming up to where we are today, what is your mission statement as far as nutrition goes? How would you kind of quantify where you're at right now, and what would that be?
Yeah, where I'm at right now is, I guess, sort of studying the field of metabolism, looking at all things from what the Americans called autophagy and we called autography, with fasting and so forth, looking at reading biomarkers, biometrics. And I think the most important big change for me is that I have looked at a ketogenic diet for many, many decades. But I think the fascinating thing that's really piqued my interest was in 2004, Dr. Richard Veitch first discovered a molecule called beta-hydroxybutyrate. And he recognized that actually being in this state of ketosis, it is basically sort of cognitive or neurological and physiological human optimization. So he took 2 studies to the American military there and then. They gave him a check for $10 million to go and explore. And so then anyway, NASA was involved, the American, Navy SEALs were involved as well, because they recognized that equally, to be in ketosis wasn't an easy state to get to, i.e. you had to follow a low carbohydrate diet, higher fat content, or too fast. And when you're expecting soldiers to go out on a mission, you can't really expect them to be continuing in a fasting state. So he began the discovery of this molecule. so I started to study more about this particular molecule, which again, bizarrely, in nutrition through my time, the approach has very often been to eat 3 meals a day and to also snack in between. And so when you look at the condition of, or the state of being in ketosis, you understand, as I said, to get there, you either have to follow a ketogenic diet, which is a higher fat, lower carbohydrate diet that actually doesn't suit everybody anyway, and to bring in the practice of fasting, which is a very ancient naturopathic sort of practice, and obviously practice spiritually as well. So I'm thrilled to see more currently now that fasting is really gaining traction as a health intervention, for want of a better word. But my approach was, then I became so fascinated in understanding the ketone molecule. And this was also because my work, as you mentioned in the Sunday Times, when I did my Master of Science degree, it taught me to be incredibly rigorous with my research. So I would never accept any product on face value. So if something was new and I hadn't tested it before on patients, I then would test it on quite a good subset of people and equally do a lot of due diligence. So when I first sort of saw the ketone molecule myself, this is before doing the research, I just couldn't get my head around how this drink could get you into clinical ketosis in under the hour. But I want to add the caveat, as you know a little bit about my health journey, which I won't go into now, but the bonus in some respects of my story and my wisdom is not only have I studied for decades, and I continue to study literally every single day, but I've got the battle scars, and I have survived sort of illnesses that medicine said I would not survive. And because of my training, people used to say to me, but why you? All you care about is human suffering, and yet you've got this and you've got that. And I said, but I feel God's given me this because I will find a way. And if I find a way, I can be the one who gives hope where there is no hope and gives light to someone in the dark.
On that note, sorry, Jennifer, on that note, obviously going back, I know your health history too. And I always say, you know, whether it's getting my hip resurfaced, or Wayne and I have been through so many different trials and tribulations, not just with our own personal journey, but with the journey of our loved ones. And so practicing what we preach and well-being obviously does pay dividends because you can get through things. But let me put you on this one, because ask a question here. Now, Wayne and I started intermittent fasting, say 15 months ago, 16 months ago, and it's really helped me immensely. And all of a sudden I did a lot of research, and obviously that puts you in ketosis, intermittent fasting. My problem with the keto diet is, and my question to you would be, if we are what we eat, do I want to be a piece of bacon, or do I want to be some fruit as I break the fast? Because Wayne and I are still waiting to break our fast about 1 o'clock today, and we have a protein shake, you know, non-dairy protein shake, and then we add lots of fruit and some vegetables into it. And that's the first thing that enters our gut. And because of serious, because I use my hand so much as an osteopath and being close to 65, I find that it takes away my inflammation by the types of food I eat. So the keto is one thing, or the ketosis is one thing, which I really believe in. And I really believe in that, you know, basically through history, Spartans used to fight on an empty stomach. So I get all the stuff about performance and athletic performance and healing with fat. But what I don't understand is when people go on the keto diet, or my question is, the foods that they select, I don't find that they're the healthiest choices, and they wouldn't be for me, because they would increase the acidity in my system. And having gone through ulcerative colitis, I know this, that any kind of meats or saturated fats or sodium is the worst thing for me, besides sugar, obviously being the worst poison. So maybe you could explain that, and what's your take on all that?
Sure. It's a really fascinating talk to bring this up, because there's a massive, massive amount of information. So you're already talking bacon, and bacon is known as dirty keto. So keto has moved on so dramatically now. The critical thing is we are eating natural fats. So anytime you start eating fats, you know, especially some of the plant fats like canola, sunflower, and so forth, all those ones that have been altered chemically to make them into a spread, you are then taking in something that nature didn't give to you.
Gotcha.
So where Atkins, and Atkins again was blamed a lot for this, his initial diet did have a lot of protein, and that's where the criticism came in. But if you look at his later work, and even people like Dr. Jeff Volek, who then have rewritten the Atkins, it is basically, so what I follow is we have higher plant fats. So to me, the important thing with fats, we have 3 different types of fats. You have short chain, medium chain, and long chain. So these have all been proved to be highly beneficial to the body function. So short chain are things like butter, grass-fed butter, or ghee. A great example of medium chain is coconut oil or MCT oil. So MCT oil is almost like an extraction of more of the medium chain triglycerides from coconut oil. And there's a massive amount of research into this in particular for the brain. Let's look at the brain. The brain is primarily fat and water. So this is where, you know, you look at a massive significance. And then the third one is the long chain fatty acids, the omega-3s, which primarily come from fish. You can get from hemp, flaxseed, etc., but your body has to go through a conversion process to make that into the same molecule that it comes in with fish. So what they have found with research as well is that inflammation is the root cause of all disease. And the final take home, I'd say, from the Metabolic Health Summit, looking at all the medical doctors, scientists, and researchers as they spoke, what we have to look at is any form of carbohydrate, that includes fruit, not eaten in moderation, raises your glucose level in the body. So that's one fuel system we have, is glucose. The second fuel system we have is the ketone. So we actually run like a hybrid car, petrol, and we run on electric. So we run on ketones and we run on the glucose. But the important thing is that most people now, and this is a danger with veganism, because nobody ever looks at their total carbohydrate load. So as even cardiologists spoke, including Dr. Asim Malhotra, who's a brilliant UK cardiologist. So in a very simple equation, you raise or elevate your blood sugar. Your blood sugar in the morning, the amount in the body, in the muscles and the liver, is only 2 teaspoons.
Right.
So the minute you elevate your blood sugar, your pancreas kicks out insulin to try to get it back to homeostasis, get it back to that 2 teaspoons, okay? But what happens over time is that you become, your pancreas, your insulin, it's like pushing it out, along with stress and all the other things that affect the delicate balance of the orchestra of our hormones. And the problem with insulin is an absolute driver for disease, and insulin causes inflammation. And with my functional medicine hat on, I would say, and this has been proven, literally every major disease we are dealing with now, be it cardiovascular disease, be it cancer, be it diabetes, is the result of inflammation. And the ketone molecule and the right kind of keto diet, actually, it's known, they have cell signaling properties. And one of the key cell signaling properties is actually lowering inflammation. And I've worked now for 2 years with people with inflammatory disorders, including myself, who had Achilles tendon problem for years, where there was even like lumps on the back of it, just putting it very simply. I could barely walk. And literally within 3 months of taking ketones, that went. Now, the reason I also talk about ketones, and this is really important, I will jump back onto the acid alkali because that's a really important point you raised. You have people having an argument against ketones, and they are very often ones who themselves are very fit. But I did a really amazing interview with Dr. Wendy Denning, a Harley Street doctor. And as we both said, there are many subsets of people who actually cannot easily get into ketosis. So you look at someone with a thyroid disorder. So when you've got hypothyroidism, you are already in the space of having an issue with insulin. When you hit the menopause and that switch literally happens overnight, that again is due to insulin resistance. I'm working a lot now, and also with charities, with those who suffered TBI, sportsmen in particular, rugby players, footballers, and even yesterday an international cricketer. So whenever there has been any form of head trauma, and this is what I am so passionate about getting this message across, because there is too much misinformation, or actually a simple lack of knowledge. What happens in the brain? You can have your fruit smoothie in the morning, fantastic. If you fall into just 3 of those areas that I mentioned, a woman with hormonal difficulties, someone with hypothyroidism, which is 50% of the population, or anybody who's had a concussion, like me, a fall downstairs, what happens in the brain, and this emerging research is showing this, is that the glucose, and that's what it turns into, it, no matter where it comes from, be it fructose or brown rice or whatever, it turns into glucose eventually in the body. That's how it's used.
Well, I'd stop you there, Jennifer. Listen.
You know, can I just quickly
explain? Go ahead, make that point. Yeah, make that point.
Critical. So what happens is the glucose is there in the brain, but it's like the door is shut. The receptor door is shut, and therefore the brain is literally starving. And this also happens with autism. So I've been working with a lot of autistic children and adults. What they found is the ketone molecule, being a different transporter system in the body, actually goes straight in.
But going to layman's terms, Jennifer, because this is going out for a global audience, this show. And I think sometimes, and I appreciate the scientific backup with all this stuff, but where I think we're missing out here is that when you talk about metabolism and you talk about insulin, there's a couple things here. One, we believe in a holistic program. So if a person's doing strength training, using this Jumpka we have over here, doing yoga, exercising mindfully, then they obviously can raise their metabolic rate up. They can establish more lean tissue. So the metabolic rate and the way the body works is differently. But what you said was quite interesting, because I've heard alternative points of view as far as fructose and insulin. For instance, if you have, just plain sugar, obviously that increases your insulin level, and it plays havoc with diabetes and everything else, and weight gain and fat gain. But fruit on its own, raw fruit, has a different chemical reaction within the system. And what we've been told from a number of nutritionists, that it doesn't raise the insulin level if you eat raw fruit as opposed to cooked fruit.
The great test is.
But all I'm saying is this, Jennifer, just let me stop you there. Let me stop you there. Is that at 65 years old almost, I have a 9% body fat percentage, right? And I've controlled my weight, and I've seen people do it, control their weight gain, increase their metabolic rate by intermittent fasting and eating raw fruit in the morning, and then going on to whatever they want to do. I tend to eat a little bit of fish, but I stay away from red meats, and I've never felt better in my life. And I'm using my body, and so is my partner, but especially myself, osteopathy. I had 6 people yesterday that I'm training with my hands, and I can't take aspirin, I can't take ibuprofen, I can't take anything to get rid of inflammation. And anytime I have any meat, it would give me more inflammation. That's number one.
But you don't need to have meat. This is what I'm not talking about.
No, what I'm just saying, but I'm just saying that my question is also what you're relating to with the fruit and saying, fructose raises insulin level. And for what I've heard is that raw fruit doesn't raise your insulin level. And the other thing is, because I'm putting the fruit first on my empty stomach, then I'm getting an infusion of vitamin C, where I only take 2 or 3 different vitamins these days. I take a coenzyme Q10, I take a quercetin, and I take oil every morning. Oil where they test my blood to see if I need a omega-3, 6, or 9, and get those levels right. So sometimes my problem I agree with all the things that you're saying about ketosis and how important it is to get fat as an energy source and control weight and all the other things. But I think sometimes when one gets too scientific, you can't roll it out to people, because people, like, back to the Atkins thing, and I hear the Atkins thing. I met the people that marketed the Atkins diet when I was with the Duchess of York in New York. And Atkins, like you say, never wanted to go to the whole, let's just eat lard, let's just eat fat. He was actually saying something that was a bit more, moderate in his point of view. But the trouble with marketing things is that everybody has to go to the extreme to make people buy into something. It can't just be, common sense. No, it's got to be extreme. And and I think that's the problem here. But let me ask you this. What is the effect? Do you yourself exercise? Do you exercise on a regular basis? Because when you talk about when you talk about the inflammation on your leg, you still need, I could have all kinds of inflammation. I still need to push on it. I still need to get my myofascial release. I still need to stretch. I can't just depend on my nutrition to sort out my inflammation. I have to actually move my body, stretch my body, release muscles. So tell me, because there's more to life than just what we eat. That's what I'm saying. And even if you eat really well, so you have to do the whole thing correctly.
Yeah, that's my background.
Yeah, but so what I'm saying is, so I understand that. But my question to you, Jennifer, if you were to have Joe Smith, 45 years old, and Mary Smith entering menopause, how would you make the easy formula for them to roll out this formula of yours, and how would they basically do it? How do you see them doing this in layman's terms?
Yeah, well, in layman's terms, let me just go back. You can't get clearer than a car. We run on two fuels, Josh. That's simple. So you're beginning to kick your ketone engine on by fasting. But what I'm saying is some people cannot get or cannot raise their blood levels sufficiently. Now, going back to inflammation in the brain, one of the things which I just think is incredible is what they're finding with the brain as well. And this is really important. We're talking about type 2 diabetes, which is very, very common, which is insulin resistance in the body. We now know type 3 diabetes is insulin resistance in the brain. So to me, this knowledge is really important. And what they're finding is the higher the blood level of ketones, the more your brain will take it up and will repair the brain. I was listening to Dr. Daniel Amen, I'm sure you know him, a top American psychiatrist, and how much we can repair the brain even after injury. But I think the critical thing is when you talk about inflammation, when inflammation is so bad, and I've dealt with patients like this, and again, after my episodes with cancer and various things that went on, I had fibromyalgia, quite crippling for 16 years, along with this Achilles thing. So I get what you say about exercise, Josh, but Dr. Wendy Denning and I deal with patients who are so crippled in pain that getting a pair of bloody pants on in the morning is a great achievement.
No. I believe that. I'm just saying, I believe that. But the thing about it is that I tend to I agree with you. No, not one size fits all, and horses for courses and all that kind of stuff. And there's a general theory. But where I sometimes find with certain, with certain nutrition, if you look at the Montagnac diet, remember the Montagnac diet back in the day? And I remember I had all these guys that used to like to do the liquid lunches, like the Mark Burleys, and they would somehow find that would fit into them. It was almost like Fit for Life, that people that liked alcohol and cheese, right? Yeah. And so all diets sound to me like temporary deprivation, where nutrition sounds like discipline. And what we're talking about, really, both of us here, is having a discipline, a daily discipline, and carrying out the daily discipline. If you could sum up to me your thoughts on the pandemic, and for instance, how is keto a good thing during the pandemic?
Yeah, what they found is that the main reason people actually get obese, and there's a huge body of evidence on this now, is actually carbohydrate intake. And that's why a lot of people and researchers are saying, basically in the last 50 years, we have followed this doctrine of a high carbohydrate, low fat diet, and actually it's triggered this obesity situation, massive increase in diabetes, in cardiovascular disease, and inflammatory disorders. So keto isn't for everybody, every subset, but without a doubt, following a lower carbohydrate diet. So if I was just to give you a generic kind of program to support your metabolic rate and metabolism, and your brain, it absolutely would be having natural fats, a combination of the short chain, medium chain, and long chain, having a little bit of fruit, but every mouthful of fruit has to matter.
Can I ask you, what would it be? You get up in the morning, and if you're on the keto plan, what do? Do you intermittent fast, or do you get up in the morning and do what? What would you say to someone?
I'm just doing a new book actually at the moment on fasting, so I'll come back and explain, because I've got different levels of fasting for patients. So for example, if someone is hypothyroid, they actually don't do very well fasting. If someone is very toxic, again, they will have such a strong toxic reaction on fasting. Because the body is deliberately storing toxins away in fat cells. That's what it does. So everybody has to be different. So it's going back to personalized medicine. So for example, one person I may say, just be more mindful and do a 12-hour window of eating and a 12-hour window of fasting, and really stick strictly that the minute, and even have one of these fasting apps that you make sure you do the 12 hours. Equally, there are types of people with menopausal difficulty. If they are in good health and don't have a thyroid issue, I will do the time restricted feeding, where they only have a 4-hour window of eating and a 20-hour fast. So it really depends on every individual. But the main thing is all of us being aware of our total carbohydrate intake and making sure every mouthful matters. So even with, fruit and vegetables, get a beautiful rainbow color in. I just wouldn't have a whole load of carrots and sweet potatoes on the orange spectrum, purely because of the
sugar levels,
glycemic index.
Yeah.
We all just need to be moderate with that. So I think just speaking sensibly to everybody, following a lower carbohydrate diet, having a bit of fruit, and certainly having a range of light glycemic index vegetables, so things like leafy greens, shiitake mushrooms, which again support the immune system, watercress, really rich dark greens. So jumping actually quickly back with a keto diet, anything like the standard Western diet is quite acid. The keto diet can be acid, as can ketones. So the important thing is to look at everything which supports your electrolytes. So bring in foods that are rich in minerals such as sodium, calcium, potassium, and magnesium. Really, really important, very important for women to get the magnesium in. So lots and lots of vegetables and things like olive oil, avocados, MCT oils, some oily fish.
You're making me hungry because I haven't eaten yet.
So that's the thing. It's not saying, I mean, we had a guy staying with us from America who cured his epilepsy because, as you know, the keto diet.
That's how it started.
Yeah. And he was quite fascinating. He was semi-carnivore diet, which is another whole discussion in itself. But he would literally sit in front of me with meat and be gnawing either a pack of butter or a pack of lard. And I tell you what was amazing. He did a 2-day dry fast. His blood ketone went to 3.7 after doing that very intensive fasting. And I gave him, when he stayed with us, I gave him a ketone drink. And I said, so these are water soluble, so there's no pressure on the liver or kidney. And the one I use is naturally fermented, bioidentical. So exactly the same as your body would produce. And I said, look, I'm really interested. You're so sort of keto adapted. Will this drink do anything for you? And it was absolutely amazing. One drink in under the hour, his blood ketone level went to 3.7. without doing anything, just by drinking the drink.
Jennifer, we're going to have to stop now, and it was great to talk to you. And where can they, if you just mention a URL where they can find you?
Probably my name for now, jenniferharper-deacon.com.
Okay, great. Well, listen, thank you very much. We're going to break our fast now, I think, very shortly. So I feel all charged up and ready to go. So Jennifer, thank you very much. Have a great day. And thank you very much for appearing on our Super 8 TV.
Thank you.
See you later.